Well, James, what is love actually?
Uh, uh, that's the question. I mean, uh, I have actually something that I'm going to introduce. I brought it along, and it seems to be, it might be appropriate to kick off our little exploration about love. One of the things about it is that we all have an idea about love. And we pretty much, in that idea, we bring a feeling to it. So we could say love is a feeling in a general way, but in reality, love is so much more than a feeling, than even a body mind experience. It's the same with beauty, peace, joy, all of which are, I'll say, aspects of the same diamond, which we could call love. But none of which are limited to the human knowledge and feeling that we have. Nothing wrong with that. That, my goodness, we need to be love. We need to give love. That's our nature, to love. And if you just go to a shopping center or anywhere where there's a number of people, you'll see evidence of that love in its expression, a clasping of hands, a smile with between two people that's genuine and sincere, a mother with her daughter and the love between them, that sort of thing. So it's not to say that there isn't, and that love isn't essential. It's one of the essential qualities of being human. There's the need for food, clothing, and shelter, and then love. If a child is raised lovelessly, it's not going to it's going to create a lot of wounding and trauma in that child, and they may not move beyond that pain. I know some people that are more or less lodged in that past, and that's a separate discussion. But love is what we are. What do you think?
Well, what's coming up for me when you say those words like peace and joy and beauty, love, I immediately think of those terms in their in terms of their unconditionality. So unconditional peace, unconditional joy, unconditional beauty.
Right.
In this way, they all encompass wherever experience arises. And as you say, each of these words could be another way of looking at unconditional being, that it's all the same,
Mhm.
just various flavors, if you like, or
Mhm.
various aspects, but one goes with the other. So when love is unconditioned, then we can expect to see a world that we have here where there's all kinds of things going on, all of it under the purview of unconditioned love. Maybe even maybe even unconditioned love is the source of all of this
Yes.
playing out. And we, as humans, we see fragments. We see the hate and the love, and we see these opposites. But in being, there's only the oneness of it all. And the opposites fall away. They're simply mental concepts that humans have.
Yes. Contradictions and confusions. Yes. So what is conditioned experience? You can't even really call it love. I was going to say, what does conditioned love look like? But there's no such thing in this sense that we're talking about it. Because if I'm looking at something, let's take beauty. If I'm looking at it in a conditioned way, then it's going to be what my culture, what my social peers, what my parents, what my education, um, whether I've traveled here and there, all of the experiences that have come into my understanding are going to condition what I consider to be beautiful. In fact, they produce the opposites, which you were talking about, what I would consider to be ugly. So conditioning produces, as you say, contradiction and opposites and opposition and the suffering that results from that, right?
Yes. And it's not as if we have any choice in any of that as humans. That's just what falls into our laps.
Mm,
But there can be a different way, a different understanding of it as time goes on. In time, the timeless can come in and show something, and that can turn us, reorient us in a whole different direction. I was watching the movie Love Actually the other night, and what you were saying in the beginning of this conversation, they actually showed that in the end titles. They showed all of these clips of people coming together, greeting each other at airports or in the street, and there were people were hugging or kissing children, animals, and they kind of showed maybe 70 or 80 or 90 tiny little squares. Each one was a different scene of love.
yeah,
And it was so beautiful. It was almost overwhelming to see all of these different myriad expressions of love,
yes,
these different beings kind of in that and communicating that, communing with that. It was quite a beautiful vision.
yes, yes. That and essential for healthy human experience.
And when
So
you saw it on that scale of you could imagine, or I imagined the whole planet being like that at different times. Everybody's experienced that, right? And it produces a different effect. It becomes universal love,
mhm,
and then it starts to uh, suffuse itself, and it becomes unconditioned. Somehow there's a move into the unconditioned, just from the sense of having a universal love. It's impersonal, and that I think is the threshold towards this unconditioned aspect. It must be impersonal first, then it become absolutely free. That was the sense I got anyway from.
Another sense of love, and I'd like to speak more about the unconditional, because I think that's where real peace lies, real beauty, real joy. Um, but we do experience an aspect of love also in play. And it's so important to see how natural that is, even in the animal world, but certainly in the human world. We love to play. Children love to play. And even as we get older, there's something, if we're closer to our natural being, even though we maybe haven't got any idea related to or are not operating, shall we say, from an awareness of being aware, which is what non-duality is basically about. The playfulness of one's being comes out. And in nature, we often do see dogs, puppies, older dogs playing with younger dogs, running around, doing the old jerk, the zigging and zagging and that. And I've watched, I'm kind of closer to nature these days, going on hikes quite a bit. Um, I've watched all kinds of relationships that are playful with in the what we call the animal world, which is our world also, right? They're not separate. Nothing is separate. Nothing is separate. The mind separates because it labels and gets believed. Absent labels that are believed, we're in our nature totally, fully, easily, easily.
Yeah. Even as the mind separates, it's still not separate.
That's right. It's just an idea.
Yeah.
And what we believe is how we experience. Our beliefs shape our experience. If I believe, well, whatever, if a bundle of beliefs meet the broader world, and they do, this is typical, this is what we call conditioned experience, the shaping of that experience will be according to our beliefs. And it's very important to see that we meet the real, living, fresh, changing, vital, and alive moment with yesterday, with how we feel about it based on our memory, based on our conditioning. So we don't really live in the dynamic that we are actually in, within. There's a separation because there's a me, apparently, conceived and believed, me, James, defining and confining, as Shakespeare said, cribbing and confining the experience that I am having of a supposed I, of a supposed you. So when I meet you, we never really meet. It's a mind to mind exchange, an image to image exchange. Your image of me is different than my image of you. We're separate um, in our relationship. In fact, there's really not a relationship without love, without the kind of love we're talking about, which has no barriers, which gives openly, freely of itself, like a flower. If one were to want to point to an example of love, you could point to a flower, and it just gives, like its perfume, its being, its color, its beauty are offered, and its vulnerability. That's the other aspect of love. There's a fragility, a willingness to be open, and not that one will be hurt. It's not like that. It's more like a tenderness, a tenderness.
I was thinking about beliefs, and I think there's something in the body mind that senses that we actually live on the edge of the unknown, and it's afraid.
Yes.
So it develops belief systems to kind of give it some sense of stability. And when we open, like opening to love, that's an affront to that stability. Because in order to openly love, one has to drop the beliefs in order to really be open and openly love in the moment when we don't know what the next moment holds. We, the beliefs have to not be there. So I think that the belief system is a part of a survival mechanism that body minds have been endowed with, possibly for survival in, as in early life or early lifetimes,
Yes.
if we believe that.
Yes. Yes.
But certainly the beliefs are a kind of lens through which we see, and we see what looks like instability. We see through this belief lens of stability, and that helps us feel safe and secure.
Yes. Yes. Yes, we ask, even as children, especially as children, we say are walking with mom or dad, and we see something and we say, "What is that, mom?" Right? So, and mom says, "Oh, that's a little black boy." Oh, and all of a sudden there's a focus, if you will, that innocence is now prejudging that person as being black. It's just passed on, and she says it innocently. She doesn't necessarily have any particular prejudice there, but it's implicit in the programming, in the conditioning, that we don't see our own attitudes and opinions shaping our experience and then passing it on to our children, and on for generations. And that's just one very mild example, that if we look through a lens of prejudice, and we do, in conditioning is prejudging. It's just meeting experience, which is alive and living and changing like the weather. We're meeting that with our attitudes, opinions, and I'll say social agreements about how these things are done and how we move in the world. And so it's a negotiated, egoic relationship. And the ego is constantly pretending to know even though some of us are recognizing candidly recognizing that we're pretending, that we really don't know.
Hmm.
I remember as a child, maybe until I was 8 or 10, I was just totally open pretty much to every experience as it was, as it is, without any like, dislike, judging, whatever. I don't know why I happened to be that way. I was raised in a kind of innocence. My parents were very gentle and didn't seem to have opinions. I never heard them yell at each other or anybody. I heard my father once, I remember, raise his voice. So that's the shape of that growing up. Another person, another household, another set of conditions produces something else. And we're all the products in the human level. We're all the products of the environment and the conditions in which we were raised. And there's nobody to blame. This is the beauty of this. There's no blame and no shame to attach to any of it. That's part of our guilt and psychology and all of that sort of thing. We are the product of the soil or the pot that we're planted in. And if that pot is moved into the shade early in life, then the product that grows out of that is going to have grown in a kind of darkness. If that pot is moved into the light, so to speak, or gets light regularly or whatever, we're using a little metaphor, then the the product of it is going to be a different flowering. The blooming is going to be different.
Yeah, so I work with kids that have very challenging backgrounds. But
Yeah.
what I found with them is that if you give them a little bit of love, they respond very strongly. It's almost like a snapback effect. That's they've been deprived of that from a very early age, simply because the parents are just not there in one way or another. And so somehow there is this inherent need for love built into the body mind. And I think it's actually being, um, I think everything comes from being.
Yes.
So these body minds are ready to respond to love because it's their being and it's being to being. It's one being. So they snap back and they can, given enough time and enough love, they can bloom. And they may not be what society calls perfect children, who is a perfect child, but
Yes.
they can certainly be rejuvenated. And I see the same thing working in the garden. Sometimes we'll get given plants that are on their last legs, or seemingly, and we'll trim them back, we'll water them, feed them, put them in a nice place, and keep an eye on them.
Mhm.
And over time, they come back.
Yeah.
So that's being. It's like it will not be deterred by circumstance. Maybe it even creates the circumstance just to then, move through it and transform
Yes. Yes. It's wonderful you do that. Um, every day and you happen to have a job that has you in the love exchange. Not that there's an exchange of love, because it's only one love. It's not like we can actually withhold it and give it over here and not over there. real love just flows like the sun gives, and it grows whatever is in its purview, right? It's kind of like a hot radiator that just gives off love instead of heat, so to speak.
Oh,
There you go.
yes, it radiates somehow.
Yes.
And it's a spontaneous radiation. It's not, there's no thought process in it.
This
It's just rolling out of us.
I've got a something here. I came across it and I put it aside, and I didn't know whether I would actually bring it into this discussion, but here it is, and it seems to be happening. It's a poem I wrote some years ago. I go to say it's more like a song or more like a prayer. Uh, so I'll just read it, and hopefully, not even hopefully, maybe we'll all enjoy it. The only answer. From where do we arise in beginning every day? Where do we go at night when control slips away? What do we suppose is happening at the end of the day? Those marble gods and you aren't talking like you did before. So how do you pray after walking out of that holy door? What do you do when you can't believe anymore? There's no need to answer, no need to reply. I was just wondering, I don't know why. Still, I'm happy, happy to say there's no end to life. Nothing real passes away. Trust love, step out of the fray, relax in not knowing, and you'll enjoy the play. Love's the only answer at the end of the day. Love's the only answer at the end of the day.
That's very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
It's what we are. I mean, at the end of the day, awareness, which is what we are, equals or is love. And one can say that and word it and maybe think about it and kind of connect in a feeling sensation way. And that's hints and allegations and whispers of love. So we can recognize some of that in our tender being nature, such as we can access it depending on our occupation, preoccupation with being a person who's got lots of problems and issues and aims and desires and maybe jealousy, all the kinds of things that the mind produces. If we're occupied, even spatially, so to speak, if our head is occupied, furnished with the freight of being a person who is as an apparent entity that exists. That is it's the nature of personhood to think it's real. One of the big shocks of non-dual recognition is the direct seeing that one is not what they think they are or what they feel they are. One is not a belief. I'm not an idea. You're not an idea. Nobody's actually an idea or a belief. We're not anything the mind, we, the person, can know. The mind is totally limited. It can only label, compare and contrast, and silo information and believe this information to be what is right and good and bad and so. And mostly, though, our beliefs are subconscious. That is like 85, 90% of our functioning is below our conscious level. One thing that happens with a instant recognition of being that we're talking about, the clarity that comes out of that is like a light that's shined on the furnishings in the mind, and you begin to see what was in the dark, what was subconscious. You're constantly watching the comings and goings of the mind. And so that what was not seen before is pretty much regularly seen in awareness, but not judged. So awareness is choiceless, totally, totally choiceless. It has no hound in the hunt, as I like to say sometimes. So it's freeing. Its awareness is free and freeing in its sense of bringing light into our relationships. And we start to see, and it can be difficult, certainly disturbing, to see how we're relating from programming, from our conditioning. There's a kind of willingness to do that. That is the essence of awareness, which is love. In other words, love is the only answer at the end of the day to one's broad deepening of reality and relating harmoniously. I'll say not even relating, it's more like communing, because we are this. There's only one thing going on here, as one of my teachers used to say. There's only one thing going on here. And that, I would say, is love.
The only thing going on.
The only thing going on here.
When I look around in the world these days, I tend to see life as love in action.
Mm-hmm.
That is a manifestation of love, of unconditional love.
Mm-hmm.
And it does inform the body mind to some degree because I'm much more relaxed than I was, in my earlier years. There's a lot more tension back then when I was in conflict with life.
Mhm.
But as soon as life is seen for what it is and it's inseparable from what you are, then there's this deep sense of relief. Even gratitude comes in, and uh, and this relaxed attitude to life. So conflict will arise inside of that and come in and leave, and friction will come in and leave. But that beingness is never disturbed.
Mhm.
It's just completely open to whatever comes in. It doesn't prevent and it doesn't encourage. It just is there. And the body mind can begin to take on some of those attributes. And that's another one of the ways that the suffering is alleviated, the psychological suffering is mitigated by that.
Mhm. We say so much in silence, don't we? That's love.
Yes, it shows itself in so many ways. For me, the silence, or if I'm just listening to somebody and the silence arises in my awareness or in the awareness here, that's a sign of love when you're just listening with no thoughts to the
Mhm.
other person, what they're saying. And their thoughts become your thoughts. They just sit there in the space where you are. It's quite interesting. Sometimes I get that with books where I'm able to really read and be with the book, and suddenly the voice of the author has become my voice. And I'm like I'm speaking to myself in some way.
Man, love resonates, doesn't it? I mean, it's just a resonating, resounding of itself. To know love, be love. To know peace, be peace. Um, to know beauty, be beauty, be beautiful. Love is the gateway, the introduction, in a very real sense. Without love, we would have we'd be living in a very dark place all the time. And some people, it seems, are in a very dark place all the time. But there is love there. It's just that the clouds have obfuscated between them, so to speak, and the sun, such a way that they're living in shadow.